Welcome to our fifth and final meters training video on the Kenwood TS2000 radio. My name is Rick Frost and my call is Kilo 4 Romeo Echo Foxtrot. In this program we'll look at the TS2000 sub-radio and how to use it. It's my sincere hope that this series of videos has helped you become more familiar with the Kenwood TS2000 radio. We've just scratched the surface, so if you have further operational questions, be sure to look them up in the operator's manual for the radio. There's lots of great information there. So now, let's look at the sub-radio. Currently I have the main radio up. You'll see its interface with the push-to-talk indicator, control indicator. We're in memory mode right now, indicated by the M. We're on channel 20. You can see what frequency that is, and there's also a descriptor of it. To turn on the sub-radio, and that interface will come up to the right here where the blank space is, we're going to come down to the bottom right-hand corner of the control panel, and you'll see sub, and below that will be the squelch and volume controls. And this is exactly like the main controls that are just beside it, and its squelch and volume controls. So on the sub-radio, you notice there's a little LED just above it. How we turn the sub-radio on is just by pushing in the volume control. When I push that in, the LED lights up, and we also get a display indicator for the sub-radio. And we would set it up the same way as we would with our main radio by turning the volume down, the squelch down, turning the volume up, and then turning the squelch back up. The radio, the sub-radio, is basically going to be used for VHF and UHF frequencies. It does not use the HF band at all. So where this would be handy is if you wanted to monitor, say, 146.940 while you were working an HF station, you could have both turned up and actually be monitoring the VHF channel. And that's really the main use of the sub-radio, so that you could be monitoring two channels at once. Now, they could both be VHF or UHF or either one, but the sub-radio is limited to the VHF and UHF frequencies. It does have FM and AM modes. So let's look at the interface a little closer. You'll notice there's a TNC that's listed. Just ignore that. The radio can be set up for the main to be the TNC, or the sub-radio is the TNC, and that's its internal TNC. And that's just indicating that the sub-radio is configured for that. In a later program, we'll talk about using the internal TNC on this radio. And then we have the typical indication, the frequency. We're in FM. We'll have a signal strength if we see any transmissions. Turn the volume down so we won't be interrupted. How do we control the sub-radio? This is very important. If you don't pick up anything else other than turning sub-radio on, I want you to pay attention to this. The push-to-talk and the control indicators indicate which the main or the sub-radio we're controlling and going to transmit on. To switch over so that I can control and transmit the sub-radio, I'm going to use the buttons that are just to the right of the large knob that say main and sub. Now, when we talked about the menu systems, we were talking those buttons were used for the main menu and the sub menu. But in just normal regular radio mode, these are going to be the main radio and sub radio. So if I push the sub button here one time, you notice now that the push-to-talk and control indicators have moved over to the sub-radio. So any changes I make to the front of the radio are going to affect only the sub-radio. And if I picked up the mic and started talking, I would be transmitting on the frequency indicated on the sub-radio. And it's very important to keep up with where these two controls are. So I'm going to push it back and show you one other thing. If I hit the main button, it takes the control and push-to-talk back to the main radio. So what happens is if I'm talking on 3.980, but I want to set up and control the sub-radio and turn it to a particular frequency. Well, there's a button that it's kind of hard to see, but if you look to the right of the large VFO knob, at the very bottom you'll see the control button. It's CTRL, And if you push that button one time, it moves just the control indicator over to the other radio, whichever one it is. It alternates back and forth. So again, I'm going to push the control button once. You'll see the control indicators on the main. If I push it one time, now it's over on the sub. Now, anything that I do to control the radio, change a frequency, do anything that I do, I'm controlling the sub radio. But if I picked up the mic and talked, I would be talking on the main radio. And so it's very important to keep up with where these two indicators are. If I use the sub button to move the push to talk over and push it back to the main radio, these buttons will move both of these at the same time, where the control button will move just the control opposite. So in this case, I've got it set up where I'm talking on the 146.940, but any changes I make to the radio are going to be made to the main menu. And so if I wanted to change the radio memory that I'm in, if I just rotated the memory, you'll see that that's changing. But if I picked up the microphone right now, I would be talking on the 146.940 as indicated. So it's very important to keep up with where the push to talk and control are. But that's how you basically control the radio and talk on the radio, and can do each independently when it's in use. The next thing we want to look at in regards to the sub radio are some of the things that you can control. I was kind of amazed when I had the radio. I'd actually operated it for 6 months before I realized some of the powerful things that it could do. I would go over and I'm going to hit the control button. My push to talk is still on the main radio, but my control is on the sub radio. And I was just going in and manually tuning the frequency. You can either do it with the VFO knob, or I can actually use the multi-knob, and it just steps in the steps that are indicated. And I was just manually bringing up the frequencies that I needed to bring up. I kind of stumbled across it, but I found out that all of the memories that I have in the main radio also reside in the sub radio. It just won't bring up the HF memories, but all of the VHF and UHF memories that I've got in here are there. So if I've got the control button over here, if I hit the VFO/M button one time, which is what we would normally switch between VFO and memory mode, when I hit it one time, voila, it puts the sub menu, the sub radio, in memory mode. And now all of the memory channels that I have programmed in the radio that we would normally turn to during a net, now they're located in the sub radio. So now I can just switch to whatever memory channel I'm interested in looking at. But if you'll notice as I cycle up through them, it doesn't go anywhere to any of the channels that are outside of the band that it's capable of dealing with. So this is really handy. If I were looking at, let's just show an example of it. I have it on the 146.940, and this is often what I do during a hospital net. I'll leave it on the main frequency so that I can monitor that frequency in case someone gets lost along the way during the net. Then I can turn that up and actually listen to what's going on that frequency. But if I either push the control button or hit the main button, either one will do it. I'm going to push the control button, and now my push to talk and control are back on the main, and now I can rotate that to the particular channel I'm interested in working with. A couple last little things I want to talk about concerning the sub radio. You notice right now I have the push to talk and control set up for the sub radio. Again, anything that I do on the radio will happen to the sub radio. So if I actually wanted to scan the VHF frequencies that are in there, I could run a scan and have that actually running in the sub radio while I'm doing something else in the main radio. So I'm just going to show you that real quick. The Kenwood is set up to scan just the repeater frequencies. there are groups set up in the radio, and we've grouped them in such a way that just the repeaters are set up for scan. So it doesn't matter if you're in the sub radio or the main radio. When you run a scan, it's going to just look at the local repeaters and not HF. So to run the scan, I've again got control of the sub radio. If I just hit the scan button here at the bottom, you notice I'm currently running in a scan, and anytime it hits a channel where there's someone talking, it's going to stop and sit there until they stop talking. I could hit the scan button one more time and come out of scan, and it would stay on that frequency. But if I hit the scan button again, you're going to see it cycles through that. If I hit the main button now, my push to talk and control, everything that I do is going to be affected on the main radio, but you'll notice that the scan is still running in the sub radio. Now I can't scan both sides at the same time, but this gives you a way of cycling through all of the repeaters in a true emergency situation where you're looking for a signal, but actually having to talk to someone on a specific frequency. This would give you a way of kind of monitoring what's going on the local repeaters. So again, to turn that scan off, this time I'm just going to move the control over by hitting the control button, assuming I was still dealing with the main radio. And you notice I've got control now, and I'm going to hit scan one more time and take it out of scan mode, and now whatever channel I choose to put it on, it's going to sit on that particular channel. In this case, I've used a multi-knob to take it back to memory channel 1, which is our main channel. So that's how you could run a scan of the repeaters that are programmed in, and how you use the scan button. The other thing I wanted to talk about is power. But using power and what your transmission power is going to be between the main radio, hit the main button, or the sub radio by hitting the sub button. If I hit the main radio and I hit the power button, you're going to notice the power indicator comes up and shows me 50 watts, and that's what's set up for VHF right now. Turn the power button back off. I'm going to rotate the main up to a HF frequency. So let's go up to 3.980. If I hit the power button now, you notice that it's on 90. So the power button is affected by what band you're on, and that's what determines it. If I hit the power button again, I change control over to the sub radio. By hitting the sub button, you notice I'm controlling the sub radio now, and that's what I'm going to transmit on. If I hit the power button now, you notice that since it's a VHF frequency, and I have set that to 50 for that group of frequencies, that's what it comes up on. So just to make you aware that the power will follow the band, not the particular channel. And it's a good idea to check the power button when you're using the sub radio or the main radio, and just confirm the transmission power that you're using on any given one. Again, if I hit the main radio, my push to talk, that's going to be what I transmit on, and that's the button that the power button's going to follow. I hit the PWR button, and you notice it shows 90, and again, I can use the multi, as we've shown you in the past, to change that setting. I hit the power button one more time to come out of power display mode. So that's the sub radio. Basically, when we're done with the sub radio, don't want to use it, just push the button one more time, and it will turn it off. If the sub radio can be a little bit confusing because you've really got two things going on at once, but it's a very powerful tool if you need to monitor another channel while you're doing something on the main radio. The main thing I want to emphasize to you again is please pay attention to the push-to-talk indicator and the control indicator. Again, they can be used separately by moving the control separately, or you can use the main or the sub to move over to which one you're controlling and which one you're transmitting on. So just be aware of that and pay very close attention to that, and I think you'll have a lot of success with the radio.